What is up, players? It's your Slayer, Major Broski, coming at you with another episode of Legends Lounge. What's up? Go on ahead, DeadBrokeNerd, and explain what Legends Lounge is all about.
Hey, how we doing today, guys? Yeah, Legends Lounge is our little talk show where we just sort of discuss um, anything and everything related to Elder Scrolls Legends, both from, fun ideas, tips for new players, discussing the competitive scene, results of tournaments, pretty much anything. And in doing so, we hope to cater to the entire Elder Scrolls Legends community, have a little bit of something for everybody. So.
Awesome. Well, today it's going to be somewhat of an open form discussion, so we're not going to be going through notes. We're just going to be kind of open, just a little bit more relaxed talking. So today, there might be a card that we don't even mention because we didn't try to, go crazy with it. We're just kind of having open hand discussion. With that being said, there is some news that we're not looking through the notes with. No, I'm just playing. For starters, we finally got an Isles of Madness trailer, a whole 6 seconds.
Wow, 6 seconds!
6 seconds long, dude. And matter of fact, they even changed their Twitter. I don't know if you noticed this, but their Twitter has the Shea Gorath as a profile picture and the Isles of Madness banner. Wow.
It's getting real.
High King Emmerich put on Twitter about mentioning this. He says he likes that it was on the Elder Scrolls Legends Twitter as opposed to the any other account like Bethesda or the Elder Scrolls Twitter because it won't receive as much hate.
Yeah, that's true.
I think it's already receiving enough hate from its own fan base, so
yeah,
it's like we've all known it's been coming. I don't know.
Why do they need to do an announcement for an announcement, man? Like it's just give. I mean, we'll wait another week. We've waited 7 months. We'll wait another week. Yeah, I don't know if it's actually 7 months. I think it's like 5 months, but we'll wait another week for something more than 6 seconds. But whatever.
Hey man, we got new content. Everybody asks for new content.
At least we're getting there. It's a step in the sort of right general direction. We've also got tournaments on the horizon. Is there a Blood Warriors Guild this week?
Every Friday. They also have more than that. Every Friday at 2 p.m. EST, and now they're doing one at 8 p.m. EST.
Oh wow, that's
Fridays.
pretty dope.
They're trying to make it work for the Americans as well.
That's pretty sweet. Cool. So yeah, that is a free to entry tournament, I believe, and there are
BWG merch.
Oh yeah, dude. Blood Warriors Guild logo on that hoodie, super sexy.
Oh yeah,
super sexy. Everybody check that out. And you can go over to their merch store. So that is that's the Blood Warriors Guild tournament. I believe it's free entry. I believe the prize is a bunch of pack codes and stuff. Yeah. Very cool. So if you're a newer player, definitely check that out. So then on Saturday we have the Team Rank Star Classic tournament. You're definitely going to want to check that out. That features some of the best of the best of the best who have qualified vis-a-vis points or tournament finishes or ladder finishes. So go and check that out. I managed to slide into the tournament from basically I was not in the top 32 on points, but some of those people couldn't make it, so I managed to slide on in there as an alternate. So I'll be playing in that. I'm ready to get my butt whooped in the first round, but it'll be fun either way. That's going to be featured. That starts at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. They're going to have really great coverage. Silverfuse and Laserdisc on the cast. It's going to be an awesome time. High production quality is usually to be expected from Team Rank Star. So check that out for sure. Plus the casters are a ball of fun.
What time is that again?
That is 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Saturday. And then Sunday, there's a Warp Meta. That's another free to entry thing. The prize for this one, that is $100, I believe. If you win, you get 100 smackaroos. Yes. The classic golf clap, ever so classy. And I think second place gets some cash as well. So definitely go and sign up for that. It's free entry. It's always a blast. We want to make sure people are checking that out. I will either be playing or casting it one way or the other. That one's always fun too. And if it's anything like last time, we'll get to yell at Costa's girlfriend for tripping over the router cord again. So always fun. I'm not gonna let him get away with that. That was hilarious. Anyways, yeah, that's the update on the tournament scene, guys. And by the way, if you are looking for deck to play, Indozoa over the last week posted up a tournament meta snapshot, which is just a butt ton of different decks and sort of general descriptions of them. So if you're looking for a new deck to play, or you're trying to sign up for your first tournament and you don't know what to play, go check that out. That's on Team Rankstar. In fact, I will get that linked over there in the chat. It's super useful.
Awesome. Well, today's episode is going to be talking about the state of willpower. This is going to be the beginning of a series where we talk about the state of a lot of cards. I guess pre-Isles of Madness. We do have a few Isles of Madness cards that have been announced, so this is something that we can revisit down the road whenever the whole set of Isles of Madness comes out. But as of right now, where do these certain cards stand? And we decided to start on willpower.
Yeah, I think it's cool to like sort of evaluate where the power level is and in what fashion. Like every color is powerful in its own way, but sort of understanding why and like seeing about like what some of their best tools are and like what decks are they heavily contributing to, what things aren't pulling their weight. I just went ahead and linked that tournament meta snapshot, guys, so definitely check that out if you're looking for something to play. But and actually this one does not have the deck codes up, but if you go to Reddit, you can find the deck codes associated. Oh no, there's the list. Never mind. I lied. But yeah, going into Isles of Madness, just sort of trying to feel out where each one is. And then of course we can reevaluate down the road and see how that shifted, you know?
All right, so let's go ahead and get straight at it. I just want to open up with a question, I suppose, to get your insight on this. A little while ago, I was making a mono willpower Crusader deck. I know that sounds weird, but like, you know, you have the dual color cards, so trying to do that. And my lovely deck advisor told me, hey, this is a good idea because you're going to want some chargy boys and you're going to want to have the Orc Lane captains to help boost up your lane. So he's like, even mono Crusader isn't really well. Well, in the discussion, this is where the question's going. I said, well, the issue with yellow is that yellow kind of sucks by itself, and that's the reason why I was trying to do it with the Crusader, because at least it had the dual colors. So, and that way I can maximally use the effects for, like, if you have 4 yellow cards on the board, then you get this or whatever. What are your thoughts on that? Like, does yellow? Somebody argued back with me saying that yellow actually works best by itself. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay. I actually see you had me sold, and then you gave me a kernel of doubt, and now I don't know. I think I would argue that every color is bad by itself in comparison to having a second color to fill in the gaps. Like no color has everything, right? But I do kind of also agree that yellow is in my opinion, the least cohesive color. As in, some of the most powerful tools in yellow don't work with the other half of the most powerful tools in yellow, if that makes any sense.
Right.
So you've got the super strong removal packages of like Piercing Javelin and Casting a Time and Dawn's Wrath, which will not be featured in a deck that is running the token synergies, right? And of course, with it lacking support removal and silence, I think it's definitely a strong candidate for the worst solo class. The exception here is that if you were to take make a monocolor only tournament, I think that yellow would be one of the top contenders. And the reason why is that when you take dual color away from other classes, they're much more balanced in terms of the spectrum of, aggro to mid range to control, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, yellow, I think, could field a damn good mono yellow like token aggro deck that, in comparison to a monocolored deck from each of the other ones, they wouldn't be able to field something as good except for maybe red. I think you could make a damn good mono red deck. So I think red would be another one. So I guess it's a weird, multifaceted question, and that like,
Right.
You can't. It's such a. I think yellow is probably the worst color,
Mm-hmm.
but it's really good at what it's good at, which is tokens, and getting wide boards and buffing them. Right. I mean, Divine Fervor is the main reason I think people really like yellow. Is Divine Fervor is dope, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's kind of the thought process. Although I will say, like, you can do yellow heavy Crusader, which is damn good, arguably. And I played Crusader in tournaments and on the ladder for a time, where like in tournaments I think I was like 8-2 with it in the performance in the tournaments that I played, and it had not a single charge creature. It was just entirely focused on buffing creatures out of removal range, right? So, and creating wide boards. So I mean, yeah, it's susceptible to Ice Storm, but not if I could buff things to 4 defense. So I think it's definitely better with a few chargers, but I don't think it's necessary entirely necessary. And I think that sort of goes with, but like Orc Clan Captain, I feel like has to be in there. Orc Clan Captain's damn good. But
Mm-hmm.
like, how do you feel about, because you've played a bit of Redoran, right?
Yeah.
Um, how much like yellow makes up, and I haven't played much Redoran, which is why I'm asking, how much does yellow impact the Redoran build? You know what I mean? Or is Redoran mostly red and purple?
I mean, it depends on how you make your Redoran deck. I mean, I was
Yeah.
playing a lot with aggro Redoran because I love aggro decks. So the things that I would run would be Fifth Legion Trainer, which would
Hmm.
work well with my Chargy boys, and then I would also have my Divine Fervor as well as Dawn's Wrath. No, I mean not Dawn's Wrath, Dawnbreaker. So I mean,
Right.
just just some of your standard cards, especially in an aggro matchup that you would probably even have in a Halalu deck. I also had East March Crusader for card draw.
Hmm.
But I
I mean,
mean,
East March Crusader is just such a strong card. Break a rune. He's got great stats for 3 aggressive stats, and he just
mhm.
draws you a card immediately. It's not even on a delay. So like, as long as you've broken a rune, so any deck that you want to be aggressive in, and arguably some decks that you don't want to be aggressive in, like I would say in a deck that struggles for card draw, like let's say maybe like a control spell sword or something like that. Not that control spell sword is viable right now, but I would
Mhm.
argue that like you would put East Marches in because you need card draw so bad, and then break 1 rune and then stop, right? Break the first
Mhm.
rune and then stop, so that you can start triggering your East Marches and stuff like that. Um, yeah, I mean, what in your mind are some of the strongest yellow cards?
Okay, well, right off the bat, and I already said it earlier, is Dawnbreaker. I think I would argue Dawnbreaker is probably one of the most powerful cards in the game. Um, but then like stepping away from that, I would say, and I've already said this before, Divine Fervor, and then the single removal cards. I don't know. I say that like okay, so casting the time, it's very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say so much for Piercing Javelin. Yes, it is a prophecy, but casting the time, the reason why I would argue that's a very powerful card is because, um, as a control deck, you're stopping your opponent. You're minimizing. I had somebody who was playing a blue yellow the other day. I don't know, a blue yellow.
Mage.
I don't know if it was mage or if it was another variant like tribunal, but it had blue and yellow, and he played both Twilight, Piercing
Piercing Twilight.
Twilight, and Casting the Time. And then on top of that, he had that one card, that one blue card that allows you to get after you summon use an action card, you get to put another 3 in your deck. So you
Oh,
just keep on
Tharana. Oh,
spamming casting the
gross.
time, dude. And
Gross.
And that, I mean, of course, it's like, just a one instance, like a snapshot. But I'm just saying, let's just say if
Yeah.
you have cast in a time and of itself, we're looking at willpower in of itself. I think it's very powerful. I mean, especially if you're playing, especially if you're a knowledgeable player, like you know what you're playing up against. You've been playing the ladder for a while, and you're like, huh, this is an issue because this is the certain meta. We don't have to deal with this issue anymore. Bam, it's
Right.
gone. Which kind of sucks being the other player. At least with piercing javelin, you get your card back, but Acid of Time's a nasty card, dude, and they do not let you get at it. As far as anything else, I mean, unfortunately, a lot of the best cards are very expensive. You would have Hive Defender, 3/6, is to be able to do 3 damage on the board and maintain 6 health, but it's a 4 drop. And then we have
Yeah.
Cloud Rest Illusionist, which is a 4/3. I would also argue that this is a pretty powerful card, but it's also a 4 drop.
Yeah.
Drop it as summon it and gives the creature -4/-0.
Mm.
So some of the other cards I find are a little bit more. Some of the other cards that are, and then of course I think this is one of I think this is the most powerful cheap card would be Fifth Legion Trainer. I think if you're running yellow,
Yeah.
it's almost necessary. I can't think of an instance in which if you're running creatures, I mean, if you're running a lot of action cards like Control, I see why you wouldn't use it, but and
I mean,
then
fifth legion trainer is just it's dominating, and it's got the stats to keep it alive at 3 defense for a 2 drop. Like it can't get firebolted. If someone wants to sorcerer's negation it, it still sticks around to then later receive buffs, even though it's silenced. Like, I mean, yeah, like yellow in terms of like they have some very strong creatures that just are deadly. But I think if we kind of want to, I mean, we can highlight some other ones if we want. I mean, there's Marked Man. I pulled it up right now. Marked Man, and they have the cleric of Klein, which is the prophecy one that gives 2 defense. That's pretty darn good. And of course, like you mentioned, Hive Defender, I think is probably the best guard in the one of the best guards in the game because its stats are distributed so efficiently.
Why not Death Hound, dude?
Yes, why not Death Hound? But like, I think I mean, one of the best guards in the game, and I think maybe there's some interesting competition nowadays with like, Moonmoth Castellan, which still hasn't seen as much play as I think it will down the road as a thing that generates more cards, like a guard that generates another guard. But like, heck, you've got like the Black Dragon 5/5 for stats for on the 4 drop. But I mean, it's unique. But and then you've got some weird stuff, right? So like, there's a lot of weird, seemingly mismatchy things in yellow. So yellow not only has the token mechanics and like the Imperials who like buff each other, as well as a lot of things like, oh, when you break runes, gain 3 health. Whenever you attack, buff up the creature. So like, there's a lot of very aggressive synergies. But then you get up in the top, and like, for the record, all of the things in yellow that want to draw cards are all things that require you to be on the offensive, right? But then they couple things in like the steal mechanic, like Mechanar's Will and
Agent.
Yeah, Agent, yeah. Mirak, who steals enemy creatures, Chodala's Treachery, Arrest. Like, not that that's not really cool. I actually hate when people steal my creatures, but it's still a cool mechanic. A lot of those things are very overpriced. But, that's something that can't really, it's a theme that can't really be carried on its own. That's a theme that has to be paired with something else. You have to pair that with control tools because there's not control tools in yellow until you hit turn 5. Like, there's no efficient stuff, so there's no proactive tempo swing. So like, if you look at like Assassin, you have Blackhand Messenger, that's a control tool, but it's also like it serves multiple purposes. It heals and it removes and it puts a body down for them to do something with later. Same with something like something like Giant Snake, although it's not really control, it's more tempo. Or Leaf Lurker, right? Summon, destroy a wounded creature, right? So some of the things that people have access to in like in green or red, they can come down and also do something. Earthbound Center comes down and silences. So a creature that forces your opponent to interact instead of just keep going face with the next thing they buy. And of course, then they have the support synergy. So like what we're looking at here, and I kind of want your thoughts on this. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? Is I feel like Yellow and Willpower doesn't. They have a lot of extremely disparate themes, and like none of which outside of tokens are particularly fleshed out.
So like one of the things that I mean, we pointed out some of these cards. I still think they need to patch Manticore again, but other than that, haha, lol.
Yeah, Manticore.
Yeah. Anyways, no. In all seriousness, I think the issue with Yellow is like you said earlier is it has no continuity going throughout throughout it. Like it almost you see the personality and then you don't. Where it's like, okay, so we're running a lot of tokens, right? And that's a good thing, but I'm trying to find a card that doesn't really fit with the personality. You would have, I don't know how to say his name, the Mardar. When a friendly creature destroys an enemy rune, equipped it with a random item. That sounds to me a lot more like. I mean, this is a great card. I've seen it used really well against me.
Yeah,
but it sounds battle magey. It doesn't sound Willpower at all.
Yeah.
And especially the aggressive attributes of it, where I mean, breaking a rune, we see that attribute in a lot of the other yellow cards. But the thing of it itself is adding an item, and there are no other cards that supplement that in Willpower.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of awkward that it's like in the mix of everything. Would it be powerful in a battle mage deck? Probably. I mean, I'm not gonna say it wouldn't be powerful, so that would be the reason why they dropped it in Willpower. But it's just awkward, I mean, why is it there? That's the thing with Willpower. I think just to make it simple is to say that it works well with other sets, but in of itself, I don't know. Like green has more like when I look through a green set, like agility, or if I look through strength, I know what I'm getting into. Like when I look through an agility set, I'm like, all right, this is going to be something that's going to be creatures hit the face. It doesn't necessarily have to be aggro, but it's supporting that type of role. And when you think of Willpower, you think tokeny, to control the board as much as you can, and then all of a sudden we have, cast at a time, single card removal. And yeah. I love that card. It's a great card, don't get me wrong, but things that I think would supplement that more would be like Divine Fervor, obviously, because it helps all of your tokens. So what are your thoughts of that?
Well, and as I'm looking through, and I think both of us have the game up and are kind of looking through the collection and everything. I'm looking at the top end, right? So if I'm someone new to the game and I see yellow and I look at Piercing Javelin and I look at Cast in a Time, and then I look at things like Hive Defender, and I look at things like and even though this card isn't good anymore, Elixir of Vitality, or what's the other one? The potion, with the Prophecy Potion. I'm seeing a lot of really good like late game defensive tools, right? I'm saying, oh, maybe this is like meant to be like a stall deck. And of course, I'm a little confused by all of the little by all of the aggressive token creatures, but I'm saying, as it should be, I think yellow should have more than just one theme. I think that. I'm not complaining that it has multiple themes. My thought is that they're not super fleshed out. But anyway, so I'm looking at this and I'm saying, oh, okay, I see. Okay, so it wants to go late. That's really cool. How can I achieve that? Oh, well, look at this. They've got executes and arrow storms, right? Maybe that's supposed to be the middling, early game removal. And of course, we all happen to know that despite the inclusion of Harmony, which I think is a bubble, really good card in a bubble, it doesn't do enough to enable those cards like Arrow Storm, right? Which, I mean, 2-card combos to achieve the same thing that other classes can do, with 1 card, like an Ice Storm. It's just not as feasible. And then you go up, and this is what I'm getting at. You go up and you say, all right, So yellow wants to control, or it has options to control. What are we building towards? And you go to the 7+ section, and you see a heavily nerfed Manticora. You see Mirac, and that's it.
Oh man,
That
Dawn's
is
Wrath, dude. That's all fun.
well, Dawn's Wrath is removal, but I'm saying like what
I'm
what
just joking.
finishers are you looking towards, right? What big creatures are you finishing with, right?
Mhm.
I mean, because you go over to purple and you've got Bone Colossus, Nogleave, Pureblood Elders. I mean, Skeletal Dragon used to be played, and it's not played at all anymore. Arguably, Bone Colossus isn't either. Blood Magic Lord, Night Talon Lord. Like you've got 4 or 5 different options of top end creatures you can play, most of which are non-unique. Meanwhile, over in yellow, you've got the unique Mirac, and Manticora used to be that finisher, but having it remove guard means that it's no longer a proactive tool that also defends you, kind of like what we were talking about. I was mentioning things like Leaf Lurker that can put a body down, that can absorb trades, and also do something to your opponent. Manticora was like, the perfect vision of that. And now, without it having guard, it's so much harder to justify around turn 10 when undoubtedly you're either super in control and probably don't need the destruction, or you're like in a really tense situation and you really wish it had guard, especially when people start jamming the shadow lane against you. I mean, because like blue has Onkano and Lanith and Supreme Atromancer and Sothasil, and they've even got Wisp Mothers, which used to be a thing, but now like again, like just like some of the older cards like Bone Daddy and stuff aren't needed anymore. They used to be big finishers, and it's like, well, there's better big finishers now. Heck, even red, which is supposed to be the aggressive class, has Vigilant Giants, aspects of Hircine and Belligerent Giant, to finish off the top of the curve. Plus the red year, but that's really not. And of course, Rage is its own.
I hate
weird
losing a red year on the ladder, dude. Such a joke.
Yeah. Have you gotten on Kano red yeared yet?
No.
Oh, it feels bad. It feels bad, man. I mean, I had this battle mage dude down to 3 health, and I'm just like easily gonna win next turn. But he had dropped an Onkano on the previous turn, which, by the way, it's not like he was playing a super cycle deck. He's just playing, average, like not even that much card draw. He had zapped me with the Onkano. I'm like, man, I don't care. I've got this big ass board. I'm about to win. And then he red yeared, and all the breakthrough killed me. And I'm like, how often does that actually go off?
I bet he felt awesome though.
Dude, he felt awesome. He did. I wasn't even mad though. I'm like, okay, all right, son.
I would have been mad. You're so much faster than me. I would have been like, F you, this game is BS. I'm done. Like,
well, it's one of those things. I was like, if he had like, if there was a like viable combo deck where you can consistently get that off, I would be a little mad. But like, it was one of those perfect storm situations, and you're like, all right, there's both of those cards are unique, and he found both of them on turn 10, and and he wasn't even drawing that many cards. So it's just, I wasn't even that mad. But like even and just to finish off the point I was making, like even green can run 3 Eclipse Baronesses and a Tazcat on the top end if it wants. Not to mention the fact that it's really not even intended to be a late game, necessarily intended to be a late game. It's more of a mid-rangey aggro sort of feel with a lot of tempo removals and stuff. But like, I mean, green has arguably better finishers than yellow in terms of creatures. So like, that's a problem to me if I'm looking at, so not only is there not quite enough defensive tools that are like, you have to spend all your magic to destroy one thing, which doesn't do anything against a board that's going wide. I mean, Javelin's super bad against tokens. Like, not only is there that, but like, you also don't have a good incentive in yellow to play a late game deck. So if I'm playing a late game deck, yeah, sure, I could play Control Mage. And really the only reason people do that is for the arrest package, right? But why would I play control mage when I can play control anything else? And you can see that like when it's included in Tribunal, which is one of the best control decks in the game. But it's really just sort of, I feel like, quite frankly, I feel like it's just sort of bastardized for its, it uses Marak and then it hijacks like Hive Defenders and maybe a Dawnbreaker, and then it uses Cast into Times.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not really like it's not really a good showcase of what Yellow's about. Yellow has a lot of healing. Yellow has the ability to execute little creatures, and these are all themes that like aren't really utilized very well. And so I feel like I just think that Control Tribunal is not a fair evaluation because it's being propped up by purple and blue and their really strong control packages with proactive creatures well, not, I say proactive, but creatures that can come in and make an impact, like Shadowfin Priest or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Even Shrieking Harpy could come in and make an impact, dude.
Oh, holy crap! Don't even get me started on Shrieking Harpy. That card is busted. That actually, in my opinion, is the most overpowered card in the game. Low key, I've been like really thinking more and more about it. Like, I think that that's the most overpowered card in the game.
Yeah.
It's just not a card that you'll lose to. Well, actually, no, you will lose to it. But that's not a card that like you. It's hard for people to look at a game and be like, man, Shrieking Harpy's overpowered because the Shrieking Harpy doesn't actually deal the lethal damage. So I think a lot of people don't think about it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's for the discussion on blue.
Right.
Yeah. So let's look at all the different classes that we have in yellow, right? And I kind of want you to give me. I'm gonna name the classes, Broski, and I want you to sort of give me a score from 1 to 10 of how you think that class is on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of power level as a whole. Now, I'm not talking about. I mean, if there's a specific list, like if there's only one great Crusader list, if that Crusader list is good enough for you to warrant Crusader being amazing, by all means do it. This isn't necessarily for the viewers. This isn't to sort of trap Broski into, something that you guys can argue with, right? This is just an idea, trying to get an idea, and we're just sort of audibly talking about the decks, the archetypes that have yellow in it. So we'll start with Crusader, and tell me a little bit. Give me a score and tell me a little bit of what you think about Crusader's place right now.
I think Crusader on the ladder is probably, I would say an 8, maybe a 7. I think it's very powerful. The reason why I put it as such a high number is because it's cheap. So almost any player can get to it. It's very accessible, and number 2, it's very playable, and it's a little bit weird to manage. But once you learn how to manage it, it's manageable. The only thing that's the downside of Crusader decks that I found has been against control-y type of decks, which is the reason why I'm knocking some of the points where, hey, you would have Ice Storm or something like that, which that's just gonna be the nature of that having a Crusader deck. And I think all decks have their weaknesses, but I would definitely say it's a huge weakness in Crusader to be playing against Ice Storm because you're depending so heavily upon your lower end cards.
Let me add something to this. As I was hearing this, I want to ask you one more question. So I want you to like include this in your responses. How much do you think yellow as a color contributes to the success or lack of success of that class as a whole? So for Crusader, how much do you think yellow is a factor?
I think it's heavy. I think it's a heavy factor. I mean, you get all of your card draw with Crusader. Crusader, if you're running enough yellows in the deck. As a matter of fact, I think in the Crusader deck that I ran, they got me up to like 250 one season. Had like 42 willpowers in the deck. So, and you could do. I would say that yellow is very impactful, but just because of the nature of Crusader. I mean, I don't know. I think Crusader's good. I don't really. Even though yellow's awkward, I think it works
Mhm.
really, really well with strength. I do.
Okay. Let's talk about spell sword. What do you think about spell sword?
I haven't played enough spell sword to give a definitive answer. I would definitely say, I know we're not going here yet. I would definitely say that, um, the mage. I would argue that mage is better, but spell sword. I don't know, man. I'm just gonna have to
So
say I don't know. You're gonna have
that's
to
all right.
take this one.
I'll pick this one up. So in the past, spell sword control had a time in the spotlight
Mm-hmm.
where you could play really strong control spell sword, which would do really well. Um, right now, um, where we're at is really only token spell sword is viable, and it's worse than Crusader.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It doesn't have the strong redraw packages of Crusader's Assault, and now we're seeing Ulfric's Housecarl be included since Ash Berserker was nerfed. So it doesn't have those as much redraw, and it also doesn't have any fast interaction. So like it doesn't have it hasn't access to no chargers, right? Like firebrands or raiding parties or what have you. Um, I think that people still play it because you have access to like Windkeep spell swords and young mammoths that are just beastly and strong, and when receiving buffs off of tokens and stuff like that can still be, or off of like Fifth Legion Trainer, and some of those things can still be really strong. But it's basically Crusader that gives up some of the best things about Crusader in order to have slightly stickier creatures. So the deck is durable, right? The board states are more durable. There's much less, I think, finesse in it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and as such, I really just don't. I personally don't see a reason that you would play Spell Sword over Crusader, because card draw in this game is so strong. Like you have to have it. And so like, and again, token Spell Sword is just kind of being carried by the yellow token packages,
Mm-hmm.
just the same. And you're just including some of the best low cost creatures um, from purple. So I mean, and that seems to be where Spell Sword is at. So okay, next let's talk Mage.
Okay, mage. I think mage is more powerful, and I already said that a little bit earlier. I think mage. It's gonna be really hard to compete with Crusader because Crusader just has so much going for it. But I think that since the making of Ultimate Dragon Knight, I think Mage has made a return. Um, ever since that card's like been added onto the ladder, I mean, just mixing that up with all of the cards that you could do with blue in general, even yellow, but they're few and far in between. Having more of a control ish or like a mid. I wouldn't say it's powerful or as consistent as Crusader, but what I would say is that it's viable on the ladder.
Sure.
Even in tournaments, I see it's viable because you get just going back at it again, casting a time, getting rid of cards, piercing javelin, fire bolts now, getting rid of your 2 drops early, lightning bolt, and then you put you're putting in your Dragon Knight on the side, and as long as you're able to do that board control, that's a heavy boy. He's gonna be doing some. It's gonna be hitting for the face pretty hard. So and that forces either A, your opponent to force a removal out of his hand, or B, you get exactly what you want, and that's to remove your creature. I might be giving Dragon Knight way too much credit, but I really think he has supplemented the deck. I think he's supplemented it a whole lot. That's the reason why it's made a return in the past couple of months. So
I
I'm not
think
saying it's a powerful card. That's not what I'm
right,
saying.
right,
Like
right.
I'm giving it a lot of praise, but I'm giving it a lot of praise in a good way. Like it's made people want to play this deck again.
Yes, that's exactly kind of what I was thinking. Like, I think
Mm-hmm.
Dragon Knight sort of sparked some interest again
Mm-hmm.
in Mage. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think people looked at Mage, and Mage used to be the control class, but
Mm-hmm.
then Tribunal basically,
Took it
like,
back.
yeah, Tribunal says Mage is pointless now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, literally. Control Mage used to be a really cool thing. Now, a lot of people didn't like it, but a lot of people don't like Control Tribunal for the exact same reasons, and it's better. So what people don't do and don't like isn't always a good indication, right? But um like Mage kind of lost its biggest identity when Tribunal came in and said, I'm Mage but better,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I think now people are trying to shift their expectations for Mage, and it's tough. um I had a few thoughts on that, which is that I think, um one, I think Aldmar Dragonite really does enable some nice mid-rangey builds. In fact, Swifty for Life played a mage deck in the warp meta. Got eliminated by Endo in the first round, but the list looked strong, right?
Mm-hmm.
And lost to Abomination Scout. So it's kind of like, all right, cool. What does that actually tell us?
Right.
Um, and I think, and then of course we do see a lot of we see some token mage, which is actually really cool because there's a card that gives all of the people on your board random keywords or something like that, which is neat in tokens. Um, but then there's also uh, what's it called? Dwemer. Dwemer, like Mage is a pretty top uh, target for hosting Dwemer decks. Just because you get a little bit of removal that you need, you get a little bit of burst with the lightning bolts and Onkano, and then of course you can run some really sticky threats in terms of Wardcrafter and Daggerfall Mage, which of course I mean that's partly what people really love about Blue is all the wards. So yeah, I don't think Mage is um, on the same level as Crusader. I don't think Mage is on the same level as like Halalu, but I think Mage is in people's minds now. Like I think before Mage was probably the worst class in the game, and maybe it still is, but it's definitely being messed with, which is good.
Right. I mean, I don't
Plus,
like. I wouldn't even say that it is the worst deck. I mean, I think that you're. I might call you out. I think you're kind of underwriting it. I would be faster to say, oh gosh, Logic and you are gonna kill me. No, I would go. I would say Monk. I mean, in
you'd say
comparison,
Monk?
I would
Okay.
say Monk in comparison to Mage. From what I've seen on the ladder, mind you, I
Okay.
haven't played that much of either, but I played against both of them a whole lot. Mind you, I play a lot more aggro style decks, so of course the nature of Mage would be to say, hey, screw all of your Aggie cards.
Right.
But
Yeah.
um, so I mean, that's to just say this with a word of caution. In my opinion, I think that Monk doesn't stand up as well as Mage, because Mage you can remove it right away. Monk requires a little bit more card drop
Mhm.
that Mage doesn't require. Mage is like, you know what, screw you. I don't lightning bolt,
Yeah.
get out of my face, firebolt, get out of my face, and then you're just your yellow cards. Even if you wanted to have execute, you can have that. Hey, get out of my face. So it has a lot of tools there. Of course, it's not as good as Tribunal, but I would say
Okay.
it's
Okay.
up there.
But if we're looking at Mage,
Mm-hmm.
and we say, okay, Mage is on the rise again, or maybe people are interested in seeing what Mage has to offer in the future and going into Isles of Madness, I think myself at least is going to be looking at Mage and seeing what tools, get added and introduced as a way to, revive a class that sort of lost its identity with Houses of Morrowind,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if that's the case, um, how much do you think yellow actually plays a part in it? Because we're talking about a lot of the cards we're talking about are the best blue cards. We're talking about Warcrafter and Daggerfall Mage and Shrieking Harpies and Lightning Bolts and
Oh
Arcana.
well, I
Like,
mean, yellow
do you
in of
think Mage?
itself, then
I feel
yeah,
like
you're right.
Mage is being carried by blue.
Mm-hmm.
I think in this case, like although token synergies, I think there's token mage, but I don't think there's a fair argument to play token mage over token crusader. Again, similar
Right.
to spell sword, and maybe that's something that the devs need to think about. Is like how can we incentivize people moving into some of the other token builds, because Crusader Salt is so damn good that it's really hard to especially when you compare it to Mage's Trick and to spell sword summoning. Spell sword summoning is hot garbage, dude. I'd rather have a scouting patrol than a spell sword summoning, right? Um, and so like the just from a dual color perspective of what dual color cards you have access to. I think Crusader's clear cut better at doing tokens than anyone else. But it seems people don't even really take Mage. They'll play token Mage, but oftentimes it'll be with Dwemer.
Right.
So that's not really a fair evaluation of Mage, because really they're only sort of, again, using yellow for the best few cards, the Hive Defenders, maybe like the Eastmarch Crusaders. And that's typically like the center point.
Right. Well, and I would agree. Like, I mean, when you put it in that sense, like, yeah, then it's not really that. In comparison to Monk or in comparison to Crusader or whatever, it doesn't hold up as strong because you're depending so heavily on the blue cards that are in existence. So no, I would agree.
Sure. Well, and it's of course it's not fair to exclude that, like, having cards like, Hive Defender and Cast in the Time, or, Eastmarch in terms of the, like, aggressive style decks. I mean, part of the power level of a color is how does it play with others, right? And that's kind of also, we're sort of bouncing back and forth between the, is it strong on its own, or is it contributing enough on its own, or how does it fit into other archetypes? So I think that what I'm kind of getting at is here is that, like, outside of Crusader, what we're seeing is it's being used much more as a complementary tool than really a basis, and I think when it comes to Monk, which you mentioned earlier, I have played a lot of Monk isn't great, but I think that's more a symptom of the pairing of green and yellow. It's hard to get those two things to complement each other because they're just so different, and they're so different in outside of a couple things, which is like the pilfer mechanic, which is probably one of the weaker mechanics because it requires your opponent to not interact with it, right? So, like, there used to be like pilfer monk decks before Morrowind came out, which were maybe not top tier, but were viable. But the more control-y the environment got, as well as like the more proactive tools you got, things like Redoran Forerunner level things that can come down, do something, and stick. Shadowfin Priests, Black Hand Messengers, all those sorts of things. On Kano, obviously, anything that can come down and then clear something on the same time really punishes Pilfer, because Pilfer requires them to go face things that can come down and be a guard. Emperor's Blade and Hive Defenders. Those are all things that really punish Pilfer. So Pilfer as a team up mechanic, right, just really fails to live up to the expectations. So Monk is instead forced to sort of pair with each other in either a highly aggressive deck, which relies on green's super aggressive tools. Just like green, you can almost make a mono green aggro deck and then pair it with either red to make an archer deck, which basically just uses like 5 red cards, or you can pair it with yellow to make a monk deck, which basically just uses 5 monk cards. And so I think Monk as an identity is just, it has an identity. I think it's just a weak one, and one that needs supplementary things. And again, I mean, even my mid monk deck, which I just pulled up, like, there's some extremely potent cards in yellow, and I think it's about 50-50 between the two. So 31 green cards and 21 yellow cards, and of course I am aware that adds up to 52, but those 2 cards are the monk strike, and so that's how it goes. But having things like Hive Defenders, Cloud Rest Illusionist, Oculatus Agent, which, by the way, we haven't talked about a whole lot. You mentioned it earlier. Pittance Oculatus Agent is dope, and a lot of aggressive decks really want to hijack Oculatus Agent for that. But it's the same thing I was talking about. You've got Eastmarch Crusader, Oculatus Agent, Cloud Rest Illusionist, Dawnbreaker, Hive Defender, right? And outside of that, I've got like tech choices. So the Black Dragon, Anasi is a monk card. Clockwork Apostle, which interestingly enough is a aggressive finisher, which the only reason it's really in here is because Tazcat is not quite enough as an aggressive finisher, but like other decks would have better things to run at the 7 slot that's a finisher than yellow. Not that the card is terrible. And so basically, the basis of this deck is green, but these super strong, you know, one size fits all yellow cards that can be good in anything get included in this deck. So once again, even when the numbers are closer to each other, 20 yellow cards and 30 green cards, it's still only the best bubble cards. So the cards that are super strong in a bubble, not necessarily a theme shining through. There's no theme in including Cloud Rest, Hive Defender, and Oculatus Agent. There's no synergies there, right? It's just 3 damn good cards.
Right, and they're good in themselves.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with yellow. I'm looking at the I know you were talking about Monk for a while, but I'm about to hijack this for a bit.
Sure.
I'm looking at the 3 tricolor decks, and instead of asking me individually, I'm going to completely change your plans here. I'm going to look at all 3 of them together. And we have Halalu, Redoran, and Tribunal. And just off the bat, I would say that Halalu and Tribunal are equally as good, but for different reasons. And Redoran is the worst out of the set. I love Redoran. Redoran's one of my favorite decks to play because it has all my favorite cards, right? That doesn't make it good, and people don't understand that when I say that. I think it's underrated, right?
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people say that Redoran sucks. I think Redoran's really good, and it has a lot of the good cards, but do I think it's the best out of everything? No. I mean, why play anything? It's pretty much like saying, why would you play anything when Halalu exists? Because Halalu is the best freaking set in the entire game right now. That's a terrible argument because I want to enjoy other things as well.
Yeah. No doubt. I mean, so, Redoran is not garbage, people. It's just of the very, very strong tricolors, probably the weakest.
Right. So we have Halalu, Redoran, and this is the point that I'm getting at. And Tribunal and Halalu are equal, but in different ways. Tribunal is a really strong, control-y type of deck, mid type of deck, right? Halalu is strong aggro. It is the strongest when it's aggro. Like, you can play mid, you can play whatever. You can always make it something out of everything. But Halalu is strongest at aggro. Here's my table, change my mind. That's just bottom line. That's what I think. And then Redoran, aggro, but it doesn't do it as good as Halalu. And all 3 of these decks, I would say that they all play differently. Even though Redoran is aggro and Halalu is aggro, like, you can do the rally Redoran. It sucks. It's inconsistent. They all play some of the basic cards. So they're different, but they play a lot of the same things. So, and that's the kind of, like, emphasize, like, where Willpower stands at, where, to be fair, Tribunal might play, like, Piercing Javelins and Cast at a Tons, but it would still probably have your Hive Defenders. It would probably still have your agents, because that's very control-y, and you would want that also in your aggro decks with Halalu and Redoran as well, as to have your agents. So you're using a lot of the same cards. There are, like, slight variations, but you're only using, there's nothing that makes for yellow. It's like just picking the best out of it.
Right. Well, and this is actually interesting because I think we've seen this happen a lot. And as we're going through this, and this was like, in high school, they'd have you do a science experiment, and then when it wouldn't work out the way you expected, you wrote about that, right? This is kind of the situation. I wasn't expecting to come to this conclusion, but the more and more I'm thinking about it, the more I'm realizing that, like, theme and tribal tags and archetypes are really getting worse compared to just putting the best damn creatures in a deck and saying go, right? I mean, remember Orc Warrior used to be the shit?
It still is the shit, but not as good. I mean,
well, now it's just, why play Orc Warrior when you could play Aggro Warrior with Catapult and Bleak Coast Troll and Young Mammoth, right? And so it's kind of like we're seeing that. I mean, Halalu, as I'm looking at this list, it's basically 75 cards that are good in a bubble. There's almost no card in here that is synergistic outside of, say, Balmora, Puppeteer, and Cern Pawnbroker, because those are plot cards. But this isn't a plot deck, right? They're plot cards, but this isn't a plot deck. You've got some orcs in here. but it's not an orc deck. You've got some tokens in here, but it's not a token deck,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so what we're seeing is, because the sets, the card pool expands without any set rotation, what we're seeing is that even in decks where, like, say Redoran, right, which kind of falls in the same banner, especially these tricolors, they can just afford to say, I'm going to take an archetype, right, of aggro, control, mid-range, and I'm going to crowdsource the best 75 cards and put them together in a curve that will help me achieve aggro, mid-range, or control.
So, would you say, okay, um, this is making me think of Magic the Gathering, and I haven't played
Yeah.
that much Arena. I've been playing a little bit of it, but one thing I can say, even though Arena feels jank, it has a lot of consistency because that's just the nature of Magic the Gathering. You know, I mean, if you want to play,
Right.
if you want to play an aggro deck, you better play an aggro deck with the same kind of creatures. I found that. So, in comparison, I don't know about Hearthstone and all these other things, but in comparison to Magic the Gathering, where you go, okay, I want to play a black-white deck. How am I going to do this Demon and Angels? And somehow it works. Like, literally, they designed their game to supplement picking a certain, not only style, I mean, the archetype, but also a style, if that makes sense. Where
Right.
it's like, if you want to do aggro orcs or something, right? So, moving this over to Elder Scrolls Legends, is this going to be, or is this the weakness of Legends, in your opinion? Is this something that could be worked on where we can move towards something more like Magic the Gathering, where you try to go for a style, or is this something that makes Elder Scrolls Legends unique, and this is something that, in its own little weird way, that we should try to supplement but balance it out?
Okay, so, like, I think that theme decks need to be better supported.
Okay.
I really do think that. I think that tribal tags need more support. I think that, if you print a theme like, say, Plot or
Mm-hmm.
Exalt, there needs to be enough there for people to play a Plot deck or an Exalt deck or Betray deck. Factotums, I think, is pretty much the only thing that is theoretically viable. It's niche, but it's viable as a method of, taking a group of cards that were intended to work together and saying, these are all you need to play these together to maximize this faction or this tribe or this synergy, as opposed to, hey, that one factotum is really strong, I'm going to take that factotum and I'm going to put that in my aggro deck, where I'm
Mm-hmm.
also taking that really strong token card, and I'm also taking that really strong mid-range card, and I'm also taking that really strong orc that buffs things, and by putting it all together, I have an aggressive deck. That's my problem right now, both with tricolors, and also just with Elder Scrolls in general. It's playing a deck with a theme is too hard to do, especially, like, at a competitive standpoint. Whereas I think you're right. Like, Magic has very, very strong cards that, from what I understand, of course, I don't play Magic much.
Right.
Really, really strong cards that force you to engage with specific other cards.
I play very casually, so just take that with a note of caution.
Sure. But I kind of want to point out here, a card game I used to play. And I'm going to try not to go too far with this. But it was called Versus System. In fact, Brian Kibler, who's a big Hearthstone person, was a big Versus System person when it first came out, and when it had big money tournaments and stuff. And he actually won the first world championship of Versus System. That's just a fun fact for you guys at home. But the way Versus System worked is it was themed on DC and Marvel characters and from the comics. And it was it was another time, and so they actually got the rights to both DC and Marvel, and you could cross them over, right? But the way they did things is you had team affiliations, right? So if you wanted to play the Teen Titans, great. Every card had a team affiliation printed on it. Some of them had no affiliations, and that was considered a weakness of the card, right? because there were certain mechanics in the game that you could only do if they shared a team affiliation. So, for instance, let's say there was a big, 8/8 stat and creature, right? Normally, because you didn't track their defense totals wouldn't go down. Their defense was just there, and you'd have to overcome it to remove them, kind of like Yu-Gi-Oh in a way, right? Or I guess like Magic is that way too, right? Like
Magic,
they don't track their health, right?
Yeah, sort of. I mean,
so what you could do is you could do like what with Magic, where you can like attack with multiple creatures into one creature, right? But you could only do that if they shared a team affiliation. It's called a team attack, and you could only do that if they shared an affiliation, right? And so, of course, you could, and people would experiment, and they'd say, "All right, this one Batman card is super effing good. I'm gonna put it in my Spider-Man deck, right?" But then, if the case arose that you needed to team attack to take down this really big Galactus card, right? You would not be able to include Batman in that team attack unless you then played a card called a team up, which would cross over those affiliations. So anyone who had, the Gotham Knights and anyone who had Spider Friends, they would cross over, right? And so that would be then you could do it, but you had to include those deck spaces. And so it created this idea of like every affiliation had a unique approach. Batman was all about being prepared, right? He had all of these gadgets. You had equipment that could negate things and turn off opponents' abilities and stuff because he always comes prepared. Spider-Man was all about webbing people up, and so tapping them outside of combat, right? Teen Titans were all about getting a really wide board and recruiting all of these little guys to go and team up against one big guy. And so each faction had a unique theme. That's not saying each faction was good, but if you played a team affiliation, you were always going to play to their strengths, right? And any cards you brought in there were to supplement those strengths because of the way that the tribal tags worked in the game. It was, honestly, that still in my mind is the best card game that I've ever played, is that versus system card game. And it's dead now, and that's unfortunate. And I play Elder Scrolls, and I love Elder Scrolls, and there's so many cool things like the rune system that you just don't get anywhere else. But we don't have a tribal system that functions in Elder Scrolls. Maybe that's by design, but that is definitely something that consider a support card that were to go with each new theme. That would drastically change the way, especially if it was like went the way of the Hearthstone quest cards, where you play it at the beginning, and it would be indestructible. Your opponent couldn't mess with it. But then if you achieve that quest, so let's say play 10, last gasp creatures, then you get some sort of really cool benefit. I think the quest cards in Hearthstone, if you haven't looked that up, you should. That's basically how it is. One of them is literally, play X number of last gasp or death rattle, they call it in Hearthstone, creatures. And once you do that, you get this really powerful creature that comes in and heals you back up to full health. Something like that could help define certain underwhelming archetypes and give it that little extra punch outside of forcing people to build decks with the finishers being aggro or rage or conscription. Because now,
man, conscription all the way.
All right.
Let's just increase his mana cost by 1.
Right. Let's make it a 13 mana card.
I think that'll fix it.
You get the idea, though, right? Like something that would incentivize people to play on theme. That's kind of all I'm getting at.
Well, let's go ahead and open up the Q&A section, if that's okay with you. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
Absolutely. That's pretty much where we settled, was just that yellow, and I don't know. Actually, let me hear your conclusions on yellow.
My conclusion on yellow?
Yeah.
Dude, I would nearly agree. Yellow. Like I said, yellow doesn't have any consistency, and the cards that are in yellow really forces you to already do additions automatically into the set. We haven't gone into the other cards, but I think when we talk about some of the other cards, we're going to come to find out that like, for example, I think agility has a lot more flexibility. so it allows you to use a lot more of a range of cards. Something that you had mentioned is that there is nothing. I think this is true across all of the sets of cards and legends. There is not a theme that's supported in legends. However, with yellow in of itself, yellow has a lot of the most powerful cards in the game, but those most powerful cards in the game instantaneously make it an insta add to a deck as opposed to a. I support, and this is something that you've probably heard me say several times in previous episodes. I would much rather than make cards, and of course, I think it's an every now and then it's like, okay, this is an instant add no matter what. But I would much rather than make cards which made me go, maybe I should add this or maybe I shouldn't, because it forces players everywhere to think about how to build their decks. And I don't want insta ads all the time, because if there's always insta ads, which seems like yellow has, then that doesn't boost creativity. And I mean, almost every time you make a like when I make an aggro warrior deck, or if I make a crusader deck, this is just an example, I already know the first 30-40 cards that I'm gonna add. You know what I'm saying? Like it's instantaneous. That's not creative, that's just instantaneously and we're not discovering new things on the ladder because of it. So that's where I think yellow is flawed, is that it doesn't have enough versatility and there's too many insta add cards.
And especially you touched on that too. It's just that, like, there are some themes in there, some ideas, like the stealing theme, like the reducing things to low attack so you can kill it theme, that just aren't
supplemented enough.
Yeah, they're not good enough, and they're not being supported, so that it's kind of creating a really large section of the yellow card pool that's just dead. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's one thing I have to say is, like, I scroll through yellow and I see a lot of cards that just never see play, and that kind of sucks to say. So that was our discussion on yellow. Yeah, if anybody's hanging out in chat, definitely.
And we're opening up a Q&A time. Q&A, question and answers. Feel free to ask me any questions. Feel free to ask DeadBrokeNerd any questions. Nerd any questions. It could be about anything. It doesn't have to be about this episode. You can ask me a specific question, or Nerd a specific question. We'll keep the Q&A open for about 10 minutes, and then we'll close the episode. Are you streaming today?
I am, yeah. I'll be streaming after this till maybe 2-3 o'clock, probably 3 o'clock.
Oh, you'll be streaming, okay, later in the afternoon. Okay.
No. I mean, I'll be streaming right after this until
2-3 o'clock. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Ugh.
Yeah.
Cool. DeadBrokeNerd, you up for some Team Rank Star practice?
Oh, I guess so. I mean, I was gonna ladder with the decks I was gonna test, but I can definitely scrim you for a bit on stream if you're down with doing it on stream.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm gonna play at all. I mean, probably Halalu, because Halalu's busted. But I mean, after that, I don't know what I'm gonna play.
Today I'm going to out of state.
Not
for long, just for the afternoon. I'm going to just to let you guys know, I'm going to a church to advertise my company, to let them know about what we do, helping out seafarers around the world. It's gonna be fun.
Oh, that's fun. What now you're in Louisiana?
Yeah, we're going.
Is that right?
Huh? Yeah, I live in New Orleans. I live outside of New Orleans, but I say New Orleans because it's a general vicinity.
Sure. Do you like New Orleans?
I love it. I love it. I think I prefer Baton Rouge. I think because the thing is, a lot of people have this misconception where, like, New Orleans is Cajun. I think New Orleans is more Creole, and when you go more towards Baton Rouge, not all the way, but more towards Baton Rouge, is more Cajun, more like the spicy food and everything. Creole is more like that French, African American, jazzy, and the food that you get. You go to Louisiana for food and alcohol. So I'm just being honest here.
That sounds really good.
So more towards, if you want something more Cajun, I would say, you definitely go outside of New Orleans, more towards the west. And if you want something all in the south, anything, you don't want to get too far up north, and it's not even Louisiana.
That's cool. That's something I didn't know. Yeah.
I just as a local, we have a couple of more statements here. Not a question, but your cards are not aligned, and Broski's is a bit higher. That's because I am better.
Yeah.
No, it's just weird, man. Having to figure all this stuff out. Because like the thing is, what you guys don't realize when I'm editing this stuff, and now you guys asked about editing questions, so I'm gonna use this. Whoa,
About for the wrong side.
I didn't mean to do that. So the issue that I have, I'm gonna use this as an example, the chat box, is that I have like black boxes surrounding this to perfectly fit everything, and I've been adjusting it. We just had a co-host the other day on the show, and I had to mess everything up for that. So just, I'll fix it eventually. Gold Pieces asked Televani, what about Televani?
Telvani? Telvani. Telvani.
I'll tell you, if you ever come down to Louisiana, the two things everybody gets to know because it's Nerd's fault.
Oh, we get a nice little sneak peek inside the real Louisiana.
Yeah. We stole this from the north. We stole this from Pittsburgh. But we're Americans, just like everybody else is American. We steal something and make it our own.
Mm-hmm.
Po' boys. They're amazing. They use this French bread, fried shrimp, with seasoning, lettuce, tomatoes, mayonnaise. I mean, it's pretty basic, but it's amazing. I don't know. You can probably even find some places in the north.
Good.
Oh, dude, it's so good, so good.
Oh man.
And my favorite, they used to have a. To sign me up. They used to only have jambalaya, but I like pastalaya. All right. Now I'm gonna tell you the difference. Jambalaya and pastalaya have the same seasoning. It's Cajun seasoning, sausage, or shrimp, depending on however you like it. With different kind of, not that many vegetables in it, but it's really the seasoning that makes it. Okay, it's like a Cajun seasoning.
Yeah.
Difference between jambalaya and pastalaya. Pastalaya uses pasta. Jambalaya uses rice. That's it. That's the only difference. But
that sounds damn good.
It's so good, dude. So good.
Wow.
And man, there's this place down where I live at. They got a couple out here. They got one in Hammond, and then they got one in La Plaza. I'm pretty sure they got one in Metairie. These are all like towns within 2 hours of 1 hour or 2 hours in New Orleans. You could just, if you're ever down here, go to the pastalaya shop. It's the only place that I found that tastes authentically like Louisiana food. Because the thing when you go to New Orleans is that it's like touristy food, where you have people who aren't really from New Orleans, but they're like, hey, I can make money here, and they have a lot of money, and they're from another state, and they open up their own business, and it's nasty. Just being honest.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's the only place. That's one of the very few places on like the jambalaya shop, SHOPPE, the jambalaya shop.
Oh my gosh, that sounds awesome.
So Cajun.
Virginia really isn't known for anything.
Y'all have a Skeeters, man.
Hmm?
In Withville, Virginia, y'all have a Skeeters. I used to live in Withville.
Oh yeah.
That
is further away from me.
That's all the way out the mountain part.
But Virginia is like the only thing that people know Virginia for in terms of food is ham. Like, yeah.
What?
Believe it or not, Smithfield ham is internationally renowned. Like, and it's one of those things that, like, by law, you are not allowed to call, even though the style can be known, but you're not allowed to call something Smithfield ham if it is not cured in Smithfield, Virginia. And it's kind of something that, like, I didn't really get until, like, I left Virginia and I worked out in Kentucky for a summer. And they'd have ham, and it just wouldn't be as good. And I'd be like, man, what's up with this? Because, like, I grew up, and, like, everybody knows, just like, oh, man. I mean, deli meat is one thing, right? But, like, you're going to go and eat, like, breakfast ham, or you're going to eat ham for the holidays or something like that, right? Like, around here, people just go and get Smithfield ham because it's, like, not that far. And, like, most local stores sell it because it's, like, I don't know, an hour and a half or so away. And so, like, you eat some really good ham, and then you go somewhere else and you eat ham that's like, okay. And you're like, I can literally taste the difference. And I didn't even know this. I didn't even know that Smithfield ham was like a thing until I left and realized, oh, well, yeah, okay, it is a thing, ain't it? Wow. Our ham is really damn good. Who knew?
I went to Fort Eustis for my advanced training in the military in Virginia.
Yeah.
And I'll say this much about Virginia. I think it is the prettiest state I've ever been to. I've been to California, Wisconsin, Chicago, which is Illinois, by the way. Virginia, Mississippi, Louisiana. I've been to a lot of places.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say that Virginia, sorry, West Coast people, Virginia's prettier than California, dude. It is a gorgeous state. It really is. I've been, both towards the eastern side and the western side. It's just got a bit of everything, and that's what I think makes it so beautiful. Wow.
So you're over in Newport News?
Huh? No, I was at
Fort Eustis?
I was at Fort Eustis.
That's over by Newport News, ain't it?
It's about an hour from Newport News to the
Okay.
northeast, I think. I might be so wrong in my directions. But I know like some of my buddies went to Newport. We were like, we're so close yet so far away.
To CNU?
Yeah,
okay. That's
but
cool.
I mean, it's good. I like Virginia. I don't like their I don't like how they if you own a car, it's property tax laws, but other than that,
Oh yeah,
good.
the taxes.
The taxes in Virginia suck.
Yeah, I used to live up near DC in like top Virginia next to DC. Oh my god, it's the worst. Like, never just avoid living in Northern Virginia unless you have an amazing job, because like they will rake you over the coals with taxes, and you cannot find an apartment for any less than like, I don't know, like $750 a month is like the best you're gonna get for an apartment. It's crazy. It's so dumb.
High quality Legends content, people.
Yes, this is what we talk about here on Legends Odds. I think on that note about Virginia and Louisiana, we should probably call it.
That's all right. Okay, let's go on ahead and end this episode. I will be giving you a host, so feel free to go on and hang up, get your stream started, so I can go on ahead and give you that host. All right, guys. Peace out. Love life.